Relationships are multi-surfaced. There's multiple layers to relationships. This is true in our relationship with people, our relationship with God, our relationship with concepts. I'll share with you where you really see this play out is when it comes to somebody's drive. You can ask somebody questions like, "What are your goals?" or "What is your purpose?" or "What are you trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish?" And depending on how far you push them, you might get different answers, and you're going to pierce through different layers. And Kabbalah and Hasidus elaborate on two general layers in which we generally operate, a conscious emotional layer and a subconscious connection layer. I say connection as opposed to emotion, but I mean that in the language of Hasidus, there's midos, there's how you feel about something, but then there's the da'as, there is the motivation or reason behind the midah. And when we operate on a pure emotional level, whatever we're connecting with is very much internalized, right? Feelings are very powerful. But if we can get a little bit deeper, what we're going to notice in our life is a little bit more freedom, a little bit less contradictions. I want to share with you the Kabbalistic rubric and Torah rubric by which I'll explain this, and then I'll give you a more clinical example. You have two models of connection. In Torah, you have the Avraham Avinu model of connection. You have the Moshe Rabbeinu model of connection. And the Avraham Avinu model of connection, the Abrahamic model of connection, is generally understood as love. Avraham was the epitome of kindness, the epitome of love. He was a very loving person. He was very inviting. He was inviting everybody into his tent constantly. He showed boundless love to both of his children. And when one operates on a level of love, there's a lot of diversity because, let's say, in a marriage, there's what I love and there's what you love. There's how I want to experience love and there's how you want to experience love, or what some people call the love languages. There's a lot of diversity within the experience of love. If you were to ask like 10 different people to describe their experience, their love of God, or their love of their spouse, everybody's going to have their own way of experiencing it. It's very individualized. It's very much internalized. But because of that, in a marriage, you can have contradictions. You can have tension. And the solution to that is not to neglect what you love and focus on each other instead, although there might be space for that. But that's not where I'm getting at in this conversation. If you can get to the depth of the love, why do you love in this way? Why do you love that? Why is that important to you? What difference does that make? If you were to experience the love you wanted to experience, what would be different about you? Right? Really uncovering the depth of the love, which Hasidus calls da'as. Da'as, knowledge or internalized conscious understanding that leads to the love, is almost like the soul of love. Love is just the expression of something deeper. And if you can get to the da'as, if you can get to the deeper connection, this is the Moshe Rabbeinu model. Moshe Rabbeinu's job was to teach us da'as, was to teach us connection, was to teach us intimate familiarity with God. And that was specifically through Torah. Much deeper than Avraham Avinu. In some places in Chassidus it explains that Avraham Avinu is like his faith is the epitome of faith in some ways. Our faith is inherited from Avraham Avinu. He bequeathed that to us. But it's a conscious faith. It's a logical, rational faith. Which again, when you're operating on that level, there's so much diversity. But Moshe Rabbeinu is a much deeper level of faith where there's a lot more commonality. And when you get to the depth of an emotion, you're going to experience less contradiction. The Zohar explains that when it says Avraham, Avraham, twice in the Torah, right? God is addressing Avraham and he says Avraham, Avraham, twice. But there's a pasuk taima, there's a full stop in between the two Avrahams, because you can have diverse and different conflicting types of love. But conversely, when it says Moshe, Moshe, and God is addressing Moshe Rabbeinu, it's seamless, Because when you get to the depth of the love, to the depth of Avraham Avinu, the pnimius, the soul of it, which is what Moshe Rabbeinu represents, then you don't have as many contradictions. There's a lot more seamlessness. There's a lot more fluidity, a lot more transparency and connection. So I'll give you an example. I have a mentor in the field of couples counseling, and he shared with me this story. He said he had a couple that he was counseling that wanted very different things. She wanted another child, and he did not want another child. And he was like, over my dead body, are we having another child? They had one kid, and that was enough for them. And I'm not talking about the halachic implications of this or the theological implications of this. I'm just this is what happened. He said to her, if you did have another child, what difference would that make to you? What would that do for you? Implying, like, what do you really want? The emotion is, I want another kid. But what's beyond that emotion? What's behind that? What's motivating that? And she felt that she'd be fulfilling her purpose for which God had created her. Purpose, meaning. He said to the husband, if you did not have another child and your wife was okay with that, what difference would that make? What would be different in your life if you guys were kind of on the same page in that way? I'd feel more like a man. I'd feel like I'd do a better job taking care of my family or whatever it is. And again, I'm not saying that's right or wrong. This is what happened. The emotion, the chitzonius, the external symptom of what they both wanted, child, no child, conflicted with one another. But the deeper reason behind that was very much combinable. Being the type of person that could do a better job taking care of your family and being the type of person who's fulfilling a purpose for which God had created. These are two things that do not conflict at all. When you get to the pnimius, when you get to the soul, when you get to the depth of what something really is and the reason behind it, there's a lot less contradictions in life. And instead of having a conversation about their differences, they had a conversation about their commonalities. She wants to fulfill God's purpose. He wants to take care of the family. When they had a conversation about that, the couple was in this space where they can actually resolve their differences and come to an agreement in a much more peaceful way. They ended up having another child, and they both ended up being very happy about that. But my point here is that emotional connection is very important. It's important in our relationship with God, our relationship with Judaism, our relationship with each other. But when that emotional connection is traced to its true root and motivation, then there's a lot more seamlessness, a lot more peace, a lot less contradictions when we could trace the emotion to what its source really is, which Chassidus calls da'as, the intimate connection behind it. And one way to do this is by challenging ourselves and asking tough questions like, why is this important to me? Like, what difference does this really make? And when we start thinking that way and how it really impacts me and how it really changes me in a much deeper level, we start noticing and we start relating to our faith and to our connection, not just on like how it feels good, but we start appreciating truth for what it is. In one mimer, I saw that the faith represented by Avraham Avinu, in some level, is very much, how does this faith impact me? And the faith of Moshe Rabbeinu, which is much deeper, which is more like, not how do I appreciate God, but who is God? It's not about how does this impact me, but it's like, how is this true? It's focused on the truth, discovering truth, not just comfort. And they're both important, but when we combine the two, we have the best of both worlds and we have a lot more peace. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.